Hi guys, my name's Kevin Bowen and welcome to another weekly blog. It's Wednesday and I thought I'd take a look at kind of going off what Kent had earlier, looking at some of the Indiana teams in the tournament and kind of their ability to make a deep run in the tournament past the first round and maybe make a Butler type run all the way to the Final Four. So first to start out, the Indiana State Sycamores, the team probably most unlikely to make the tournament out of any of the four Indiana teams. Greg Lansing took over for Kevin McKenna earlier in the year when McKenna left to join Dana Altman's staff in Oregon. And Lansing's kind of that feel-good story. Philip B. Wilson wrote a great article earlier in the week in the Indy Star about this team and about Jake Odom, kind of their unsung hero, the redshirt freshman from Terre Haute, who 10 years ago was looking up to Michael Mesner and those guys on the Indiana State team when the Sycamores made a run to the Sweet 16. For Indiana State, they drew a tough draw in the first round, having to play Syracuse, a team with a lot of length. And obviously, Jim Boeheim has been there before winning the 2003 national championship. They're going to sit in that 2-3 zone, and the Sycamores do put a lot of shooters on the floor. Miles Walker, their center, is really the only guy that they put out there that can't shoot the three. They got some transfers, Dwayne Latham, Jake Kelly, that are big-time scorers and have played at big-time programs. They have a balanced attack, and really I think they have the right recipe to pull off a first-round upset. Syracuse, we saw it a couple years ago, losing to Vermont in the first round. TJ Sorrentine hit a big three late in that game. But the Sycamores are going to have to rebound. That's going to be a big thing. Length in the front court for Syracuse is huge. Fab Melo's starting to play very well. Rick Jackson's a first-team All-League player in the Big East, and Chris Joseph, when healthy, it's one of the toughest matchups in the nation. So it's going to be interesting to see how Greg Lansing's going to guard this team. But Indiana State is very balanced. They really don't have that go-to guy late in the game. We saw Odom hit the big shot in the Missouri Valley Conference tournament, but Indiana State did win Arch Madness, which is one of the tougher conference championships to win. And I think Indiana State's going to give Syracuse some fits early on, but at the end of the day, I do think the Orange are going to win. Advantages for Indiana State. The game is in Cleveland, so I do expect some Sycamore fans there. And then obviously being the underdog, being the 14 seed that they are, Xavier and Marquette, the 6-11 matchup opposite Syracuse, Indiana State, those fans will be cheering for the Baby Blue. So we'll see if Indiana State can pull off that upset. Looking across the bracket at Butler, Old Dominion, Butler a road game. Going to Washington, D.C. to face the Monarchs. Blaine Taylor's squad beat Notre Dame in the first round last year. They slow the game down. They beat you up on the backboards. Frank Azell is a big-time post player is going to give Matt Howard some trouble down low. The key for Howard and Andrew Smith and Garrett Butcher and Kyle Marshall and all those kids is going to be rebounding. Butler's going to have a team rebound. Old Dominion they just beat up people on the backboards. They don't shoot it that well from three. They out rebound their opponents and they just out tough you. Kent Bazemore was the Colonial Defensive Player of the Year. He's going to be locked up on Shelvin Mack. And for Butler to make a run, they need to see the Shelvin Mack that we saw earlier in the summer, the Shelvin Mack that we saw at times during the NCAA tournament last year. He's going to have to make threes, and he's going to have to average close to 20 points a game. Sean Van Zandt is starting to shoot the ball better for Butler. Chase Stegall and Zach Kahn can knock down some open shots. I see no reason why Butler can't win this first-round game. It's going to be a grinded-out style, but that fits right into Brad Stevens' team's hands. And if Howard can stay out of foul trouble, I see Butler moving on, and I think they're going to give Pittsburgh a great game in the second round. Gary McGee, Matt Howard, two Central Indiana kids. They're going to be going at it down low. Again, Pittsburgh's a tough, grinded-out style, but that fits into Butler's style of play. Butler likes the game in the 50s or 60s. And I think people forget, Butler did struggle earlier in the year, especially in the Horizon League Conference, early in that conference season, but they were in it with Duke for 32 minutes until Sean Van Zandt and Ronald Norred got in foul trouble. Shelvin Mack started cramping up, and then Duke kind of took over. And that was when Duke had Kyrie Irving. He got hurt in that game, stepping on Matt Howard's foot. So that was a Duke team that everybody would have pencil into Houston right now. So I really like Butler. I think they're going to win that first game. After that, you never know with this team. I've learned in the past, never count out a Butler team, and Brad Stevens has obviously done it last year, and we'll see if he can do it again. So now moving up to the Southwest region, where two teams from Indiana reside, Purdue and Notre Dame. Purdue, the 3 seed. They drew St. Peter's in the first round, probably the easiest 14 seed compared to other teams like Bucknell and Indiana State that they could have drawn. St. Peter's just likes to grind it out. Defense is the name of their game. They did beat Alabama earlier in the year, but really have no other wins like that. They're kind of undersized down low, so I think Juwan Johnson's going to have his way. I look for Purdue to win that game. But then the second round is going to be, so a couple question marks. That little play-in game, USC VCU, the winner of that game will get Georgetown. And for Georgetown, if Chris Wright's healthy, this is a top 15 team. Chris Wright, Jason Clark, Austin Freeman, when healthy, they're one of the best backcourts in the nation. And they do have some size up front. A guy like Julian Vaughn, a transfer from Florida State, can give Juwan Johnson some problems. So if Georgetown is able to knock off VCU or USC in that first round, I look for them to give Purdue all they can handle. Again, this is still a Purdue team that doesn't have the firepower to overlook anyone in this tournament, and that includes St. Peter's. They're going to have to get great play out of DJ Bird and Tyrone Johnson like they did late in the Big Ten season. That didn't happen against Iowa. That didn't happen against Michigan State. Right now, Purdue's reeling. This is a team that I could see, losing that first weekend to Georgetown. But then at the same time, they did get a good enough draw that they can make an Elite Eight type run and play Kansas maybe in the Final Eight. So E'Twaun Moore, Juwan Johnson are going to have to keep on doing them. I feel like I've said it over and over again, but when you have two of the top 15 players in the nation, you got to ride your horses. If those guys like Johnson, Burr, Ryan Smith can knock down open threes, Lewis Jackson get into the hole, it's going to be a big matchup. Chris Wright's coming off an injury. If he's guarding Lewis Jackson, it could be a big game for Lou Jack and company. So now looking at the bottom half of that bracket, also in the Chicago pod is Notre Dame. They drew Akron in the first round, a MAC champion. You usually don't see a MAC team getting a 15 seed, but I expect this Notre Dame team, senior laden, coming off the tough loss to Louisville in the Big East semifinals, to be ready for the Zips. I expect them to beat Akron in the first round, but in the next round they're gonna have a tough matchup. It's definitely not a matchup that they would like. They could have drawn a 7-10 like a Temple, Penn State would have been better for Notre Dame. Two teams that really aren't much more athletic than the Irish, but Texas A&M and Florida State are two athletic teams. If Chris Singleton's healthy for Florida State, I kind of expect them to be the favorite in that game. I know they lost to Butler out in the Diamond Head Classic earlier in the year, but it's a team that beat Duke, was a tick of a clock away from beating Virginia Tech in the ACC tournament, and then would have taken on North Carolina in that semifinal. So I like the Seminoles. Darwin Kitchen's a big-time scorer at the guard. Michael Snayer was a McDonald's All-American coming out of high school. But at the same time, Texas A&M is definitely, I think, that third-best team out of the Big 12 Conference. I think Kansas State was just too inconsistent the whole year. Missouri was the same way. Notre Dame saw a little bit of Texas A&M down the Old Spice Classic. They didn't play them, but they were in the same preseason tournament earlier in the year. B.J. Holmes and Dash Harris are two nice guards. Chris Middleton's one of the more underrated players, I think, in the Big 12 Conference. And Mark Turgeon, earlier on in the year, he said, he didn't know if his team could even win a game. And now, here they are as a 7th seed in the tournament, and the big disadvantage for either of those teams is playing in Chicago. Obviously, Notre Dame's going to have a healthy amount of fans there, but I think both these teams are going to give the Irish some trouble. Obviously, if you take away Ben Hansbrough, you saw what Louisville did. It forces Scott Martin to step up, which he did. Forces Carlton Scott, Tim Abramitis, those guys to step up. So Notre Dame doesn't have a ton of scoring outside of Hansbrough and Abramitis, but I expect those seniors to step up. It's going to be a great Sweet 16 matchup if it is Notre Dame and the Boilers. I think it would be great for the state of Indiana. Obviously, you got a great storyline with Scott Martin going up against his former team, and obviously his former high school teammate Robbie Hummel is at the on the bench for the Boilers. So cheer for those Indiana teams come tournament time. I expect hopefully Butler, Purdue, Notre Dame can all win their first games. Indiana State probably not, and then hopefully the Irish and the Boilers can make a run to the Sweet 16, and at least one Indiana team will be in the Elite Eight. So thanks, guys, for watching this, and have a good March Madness.